Welcome back. We start our news bulletin from the US, where over 1,800 more people have died from the new coronavirus as the country's death toll crosses 84,000. Brazil has recorded 749 new deaths in the past 24 hours, bringing the tally to over 13,000. The global COVID-19 death count has crossed 297,000 with over 4.3 million infections. More in this report.
US states are beginning to restart their economies after months of paralyzing coronavirus lockdowns, but experts warn that COVID-19 cases can re-emerge weeks after the reopening, saying America faces the darkest winter in modern history. The WHO has also warned that the world has a long way to go in order to bring the pandemic under control.
Countries, as you've seen, are trying to find a path out and a path towards a new normal, as many people have put it, and we're going to be on that pathway for a long, long time. And as we've seen in some countries, even a small recurrence of disease can cause the need for a serious response in terms of the public health response. So I think we're going to have to remain on alert.
Lesotho, the southern African country, has recorded its first coronavirus case, becoming the last nation on the continent to confirm an infection. Around the world, governments and airlines are considering temporary safety measures to restart their travel. But physical distancing can make flying more expensive.
We are going to have to take whatever measures that are necessary to protect both the travelling public and our staff. And until we get a more satisfactory, effective and timely method of dealing with that to eliminate social distancing, we are clearly going to have to adopt those. But the impact on both the confidence and the ability to travel will be very significant indeed.
In the meantime, fears of a resurgence have emerged in South Korea. Health authorities are calling it a truly cruel virus as cluster infections in Seoul reach 72. China has reported 3 new cases of coronavirus, all of which are locally transmitted.
Meanwhile, in Pakistan, the number of coronavirus infections has crossed 35,000 as 1,452 more cases were reported in the last day. The health ministry said 33 more patients have died, taking the death toll to 770. The ministry said more than 9,600 coronavirus patients have recovered. Punjab province leads in the number of cases with over 13,500 infections. Meanwhile, trade activities between Pakistan and Iran have resumed after 2 more crossing points were reopened in Taftan. Officials said the activities resumed through Pakistan Gate and Zero Point Trade Gate. The border with Iran was closed on February 22nd due to coronavirus outbreak in Iran. In another news, in Afghanistan, 5 people are killed and 19 others wounded in a car bomb blast near a military court in Paktia province's Gardiz city. Interior Ministry spokesman Tariq Aryan said the blast is the second in a series of attacks in Kabul's Dasht-e-Barchi and Nangarhar provinces. He said details about the incident are yet to be unveiled. Meanwhile, the Taliban have claimed responsibility, saying dozens of mercenaries were killed in a suicide attack on a military club. In Sudan, 26 people, including 9 paramilitary troops, have been killed during armed clashes in South Kordofan province in the past 48 hours. It marked the 3rd outbreak of violence this month that could derail the country's transition to democracy. Military officials said fighting broke out this week between armed residents in the city of Kadugli. They said the dispute was over an arms sale and it escalated in the past 2 days. Authorities have imposed a round-the-clock curfew for 3 days to stabilize the situation. Last week, tribal clashes in the provinces of South Darfur and Kazala left at least 3 dozen people dead and dozens wounded. The fighting poses a significant challenge to efforts by Sudan's transitional government to end decades-long rebellions in some areas of the country. Security forces in Burkina Faso have killed 20 terrorists after they ambushed a military patrol in Yagha province. In a statement, the armed forces said 8 soldiers also lost their lives during the fighting near the border with Niger. Meanwhile, the prosecutor for the town of Fadanugorma said 12 terrorist suspects were found dead in their police cells. In a statement, the prosecutor said 25 people were detained by police on Monday. It said an investigation has been launched into the incident. The UN says more than 850 people have been killed and 840,000 displaced since 2015 in terrorist attacks in the country. Gunmen have attacked a farming village in northern Nigeria, killing 15 people. The assailants stormed the village in Kaduna State as residents were asleep. Police said 5 villagers were also injured in the attack, and a manhunt was launched to apprehend the attackers. President Muhammadu Buhari has condemned the violence. In a tweet, his office said no one has the right to take the law into their own hands. The village lies in Kujuru district in the southern part of Kaduna, a flashpoint of violence between farmers and Fulani herders. The long-running conflict is rooted in disputes over grazing and water rights. Libya's UN-recognized government says Khalifa Haftar's forces have attacked a hospital and civilian settlements in capital Tripoli. In a statement, the government said 14 people have been wounded in the rocket attack. The health ministry said the Tripoli Central Hospital will not be able to treat injuries as a major portion has been damaged. It said the situation impedes the fight against the coronavirus outbreak. Meanwhile, the Haftar-led Libyan National Army has denied responsibility for the attack. Libya has been torn apart by a civil war between the GNA and the Libyan National Army since April last year. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has formally notified the president of forming a government after 18-month-long political deadlock. In a letter to President Reuven Rivlin, Netanyahu said he has formed a government which he will present to the parliament today. Netanyahu was tasked by Rivlin to put together a new government after his former rival Benny Gantz failed to do so following the elections. Last month, Netanyahu and Gantz signed a deal to form a power-sharing government. Under the agreement, Netanyahu will serve as prime minister for at least 18 months before being replaced by Gantz, while Gantz will serve as defense minister and alternate prime minister, a title not existed before in Israeli politics. The US has threatened to trigger a return of all UN sanctions on Iran if the Security Council does not extend an arms embargo. The prohibition is due to expire in October under the Iran nuclear deal. In an article, US Special Envoy for Iran Brian Hook said Washington will ensure the ban remains one way or another. He said the US has drafted a Security Council resolution and will press ahead with diplomacy and build support. Hook said Washington retains the right to renew the embargo by other means if its diplomacy is frustrated by a veto in the Council. A resolution needs 9 yes votes and no vetoes by Russia, China, the US, France or UK to be adopted by the 15-member Security Council. Russia has already signaled it will oppose an extension. Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah says the group will not withdraw from Syria as a result of Israeli strikes. In a televised address, Nasrallah said Israel has waged an imaginary battle against Iranian troops in Syria. He added there are no Iranian fighters, but military experts and advisors in Syria. The Hezbollah leader said Israel has been attacking everything linked to missile manufacturing in Syria. He said Syria's allies started evacuating bases and positions 2 years ago without any connection to Israeli attacks. Israel has conducted many raids inside Syria since the start of the civil war in 2011. Turkey says it has killed 5 militants of the Kurdistan Workers' Party in an anti-terror operation in the Sirnak province. Interior Minister Süleyman Soylu said 3 terrorists were killed in an air-backed operation in the Besler-Derela region, while 2 others were killed in Lais district. He said the provincial government command of the province conducted the operation. The Interior Ministry said Turkey will continue to destroy weapon caches and shelters used by the terrorists. In India, 8 migrant workers were killed and 55 others injured in a road accident in Madhya Pradesh state. Officials said a truck carrying migrants collided head-on with a bus on a highway in Guna district. District officials said the truck was on its way to Uttar Pradesh from Mumbai and the empty bus was returning to Ahmedabad. In another incident from UP, 6 migrant workers were run over by a state bus on a highway in Muzaffarnagar district. Police said the workers had been walking to their hometown in Bihar from Punjab amid the coronavirus lockdown. Last week, 16 migrant workers in a group of 20 were killed after a cargo train ran over them while they were sleeping on tracks in Maharashtra. A study has revealed that a third of COVID-19 patients admitted to Scotland's intensive care units did not recover. Scottish Intensive Care Society Audit Group study says out of 472 patients admitted from March 1st to May 2nd, nearly 33% died there. The study said over 44% of ICU patients recovered and were discharged, while the rest were still in intensive care. It said men made up nearly 75% of the people in ICU with COVID-19. It said ICU mortality rate of about 33% for COVID-19 patients is higher than normal death rates for critical care settings. Russia says it has ascribed the deaths of over 60% of coronavirus patients in April to other causes. Moscow's health department said it conducted post-mortem autopsies in all deaths where the virus was suspected as the main cause. The department said over 60% deaths were due to heart attack, leukemia, organ failure and other fatal and incurable ailments. Russia has the second highest number of confirmed cases with over 242,000 infections and just over 2,300 deaths. Such a low mortality rate has led to questions over the veracity of Russia's official statistics. Health Minister has flatly denied any falsification of statistics to lower the country's death toll. We're taking a short break, but coming up we have lockdown becomes opportunity for local athlete. Customers dine with plush toys at city's eatery. Welcome back. Over 100 people in Mexico have died after drinking adulterated alcohol over the past 2 weeks. This comes as measures to halt the coronavirus spread have crimped beer production. Officials say states of Jalisco, Yucatan, and Puebla and Morelos have reported the fatalities since the start of the month. Authorities say they are conducting investigations to identify the suppliers of the fatal drink. The Jiquantala municipality declared a health emergency in the state of Puebla following 17 deaths from the deadly beverages. The Puebla state government said it has confiscated 200 liters of a local alcohol and is conducting studies to determine its contents.
It seems they all died after consuming tainted alcohol. That happened in the town of Telixtac in the Xochiapan municipality. The people were arriving to Xochiapan with different symptoms, but all similar, at different clinics and at the hospital, and a lot of them died. They were not properly treated.
Cuba has rejected its inclusion on a list of non-cooperators with U.S. counterterrorism efforts. In a tweet, Foreign Ministry Chief for U.S. Affairs Carlos Fernandez de Quasico said the Caribbean nation is a victim of terrorism by Washington. He said Washington was complicit in a long list of terrorist acts against Havana. The U.S. State Department said Cuba had refused to extradite leaders of the rebel group, the National Liberation Army, to Colombia. Cuba has also designated the gun attacks on its embassy in Washington 2 weeks earlier as a terrorist attack. The coronavirus pandemic has been a bane for athletes everywhere, bringing sports everywhere to a halt. But Estonian star climber Jan Roos is using the COVID-19 lockdown in the country to advance his career. See how he's jumping ahead during the viral crisis in this report.
Being cooped up at home during the ongoing pandemic is not easy. With nothing but time on their hands, most people have tried to distract themselves with Netflix, video games and YouTube. But athletes are using this time to train and improve their skills for when the sporting world reopens. One Estonian slackliner has used this time building a training ground for himself. He made 7 slacklines of various lengths and heights for a range of activities.
There are normal slacklines, trick lines, high lines, all type of slacklines, just so I can train right next to the house. I don't have to go somewhere because I have no even transport to go somewhere. So for me it was even like I was stuck here and my friends were bringing food to me.
He came up with the idea while in self-isolation, deciding he wanted a place of his own where he could bounce and balance on slacklines.
For the last 4 or 6 weeks I've been stuck here at my place, at my house. I call it Antarctica. It's just it's my playground. So and there's 2 things, good and bad. So bad is that I lost, as all entertainment people, I lost my shows.
He says self-improvement is a constant, never-ending journey for him that hasn't stopped during the pandemic.
We all have balance. We all walk on the ground. I mean, we didn't start from walking, so we got into it. And the same here, highlights I have to build up my mental. Tricklines I have to build up my physical activity. Also, tricklining is my main activity. It's a performance. I do shows with tricklines.
Though Roos is enjoying his time in self-isolation, still he misses entertaining people.
In Bangkok, an eatery has come up with a creative way to cheer up diners while ensuring social distancing measures are in place. Let's find out about this in this report.
Ever wondered what it's like to dine with a plush toy panda? Customers at Maison Sagan, a Vietnamese restaurant in Bangkok, can now experience this firsthand, as Thailand relaxes some restrictions put into place to prevent the spread of coronavirus. Staff place pandas on some chairs to make sure people don't sit too close to each other.
Because the panda is cute and it is a symbol of Asia. Our restaurant is Vietnamese, it's Asian. That's why I want to use something that symbolizes Asia.
Restaurant owners thought that customers who come alone will feel all the more lonely after being in isolation at home for so long if they had to sit facing an empty seat. Here too, the panda tactic seems to be working.
It's great. The stuffed bear makes me feel less lonely eating by myself, and this acrylic partition also makes me feel safe eating at a restaurant.
Thailand has reported 3,018 cases of the new coronavirus and 56 deaths so far.
President Donald Trump has extended his executive order for another year, barring U.S. companies from using equipment made by Chinese telcos Huawei and ZTE. Trump signed an executive order in May 2019 that blacklisted the Chinese companies. In November last year, U.S. Federal Communications Commission designated Huawei and ZTE as national security risks. But the companies will most likely continue their limited operation in the U.S. under the license extension by the Commerce Department. The U.S. Energy Information Administration says crude oil imports and exports decreased during the week ending May 8th. The data was revealed in a weekly petroleum status report. The administration said U.S. crude oil imports have declined by over 300,000 barrels from last week. The report said exports averaged about 3.5 million barrels per day, down by 21,000 barrels per day from the previous week. The report also said during the week, U.S. crude oil production decreased by 300,000 barrels per day to over 11.5 million barrels per day. European stock markets continue to tank as concerns mount over the potential resurgence of coronavirus. London's FTSE 100 is trading over 2% lower. CAC 40 in Paris has lost nearly 2%. Frankfurt's DAX has lost over 1.5%. In Asia, Nikkei 225 led the losses, closing over 1.5% lower. Hong Kong's Hang Seng lost nearly 1.5%, while Shanghai Composite closed nearly 1% lower. Meanwhile, the international benchmark, Brent crude oil price, has gained nearly 3% as OPEC plans to extend its deep output cuts. Now let's look at the weather from around the globe. This is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.in.